Hey, I think we're live. Yeah, let's go for it. Again, deconstructing Bootstrap. I found something really interesting when I was working on the video that went out this last Wednesday about how you've been lied to about your H1s, H2s heading levels. It's a really great video. I'm really proud of it. So definitely check it out because it's one of the easiest mistakes with accessibility, and it even impacts your SEO. Certainly the mistakes that I have made basically up until I learned this a couple of years ago. And so definitely check that out. And I want to kind of go back to this idea of setting up your typography. Let's look at what Bootstrap does. I thought it was really interesting when I just was like, hey, I wonder what they do behind the scenes with their SASS. And so let's check that out really fast to kind of find ways to improve our own styles and typography, and also again following the correct rules for headings. And yeah, let's just get into it. So I wanted to show you this. This is from Bootstrap's type.scss file, and you can see I thought this was really interesting. It had this extend. Now this is really important. They add classes that mimic the heading styles, because not every time, it seems like sometimes designers like to mess around with which styles you're actually using. So like maybe you'll have a headline above a headline for some reason, and your first instinct will be like, oh, well, that's the H4, so I'm just going to throw in an H4 tag above an H2, which makes absolutely no sense. It's really bad. Again, that's what I go over in the video. But the way that Bootstrap does this is give you a class, a utility class, basically, that you can override, a P tag that can be looking as if it were an H4 without actually breaking accessibility or the SEO of the page. And so that's actually really useful. And also just the fact that they're using this extend here. Now, I did have to do a little bit of research for this just to make sure I knew what was going on, because if you look at what extend goes on down here in Reboot, you can see they're using extend kind of like include, and then it was using this weird thing that I hadn't seen before. This what's it called? Percent sign with heading, which refers to this style right up here. And so just to show you what I found on the SASS documents, I was hoping to try not to go too much into these docs and see what I could learn from Bootstrap itself. But this was really important for me to understand. So it looks like this percentage sign is actually a placeholder for your selector. So it could be like assuming you had like an ID even or a class, you can switch, the number sign versus the period. This percentage makes it so you don't have to worry about what specific selector that is. So that's kind of interesting. You can see an example down here, but let's go back to our little test page and let's try and figure out how we can set up our own system of typography and clean this page up, basically, but kind of using this as a guide. So I guess we can just go ahead and steal their naming convention since this is just for fun. But I do want to try, and we'll just get some room here and define kind of my own I guess typographic system just really fast. So it's not going to be super in depth, but I do want to cover the basics in this heading. This should be like all of the headings share these styles, which is what I believe they were doing right here. So yeah, they got the margin, the font family. This one I have different opinions about depending on if you have a really highly versatile font family that you're using that actually uses, like here's the display font, here's the bold font, then you probably wouldn't be able to put a font family inside of this heading. So yeah, but we could try doing font weight and also line height, and you'll also notice that Bootstrap has variables associated with all of these. So I think we could do something similar. I definitely do want to take on like the margin. So margin top. Something that's really important with typography is being able to distinguish which part the heading is actually heading. So if I just go back right here really fast, you can see the spacing is between this heading and this paragraph is not nearly as much as between, you know, the bottom of the H1 and the H2 right here. It's not my favorite, at least from a design perspective. And then also, as you just kind of go in, it's not very clear visually that, oh, this definitely belongs to this H3 right here. This paragraph belongs to the H3. So ideally, you actually have twice as much space above your heading as below. I think I said that right. So let's go back here. You'll have to bear with me. I just had an infusion for my MS, and so I am still recovering a little bit. So I'm a little bit shaky and a little slower today. But I think what we want to do is I want to say like maybe like 1.5 M. And this is another cool trick, is that using M's is based off of the font size of whatever you're using. So if my H1 was was 50 pixels, let's say, 1.5 M would say I'm going to take that 50 and then the half of that, which is 25, add it together for 75. So the margin top of an H1 would then be 75 pixels above. So it's 1.5 based on whatever the font is. So that's kind of an interesting way to do it. That's probably going to be quite a lot, but we do want to have, let's say like 0.5 M for the bottom, because you don't want a ton of, you definitely want more space above than below your headings. So I'm just going to do that. And then the last thing I was thinking of is font weight. Yeah, font weight. And I'll just do bold, just so it can be pretty standard. And you know what, I'm even going to do, I'll change the font family because that's a really clear one to see. And we'll just do like sans serif. Doesn't matter for this example specifically. So I do have SAS running, so hopefully when I come back here and refresh, no, let's make sure SAS is actually running. Pretends like it is. Let's make sure that it's, oh, you know what, it's probably because I didn't actually do anything. That's right, this isn't actually creating anything just yet. So yeah, let's go back over here, see what they did. So yeah, they extend, and then they're using this placeholder, so it doesn't matter if it's a class or if it's a ID is what I'm thinking. So I'm gonna grab this just as a base so that I can see what the format is. I'm not going to use this. So here's another thing that I've really fallen in love with lately is the CSS variables. So what I've actually been doing is I'm starting to define like H1 font size as the CSS variable. And that way I can throw it on to my H1 itself, the H1 class, and I can just keep it all in this root right up here, this root definition, to keep a track of all of my what are they called, variables. And so yeah, I'm even gonna do that maybe for all of these guys. So I'll just do that, increment this, and then I'll just change this to be like 30 and then 20, just for simplicity's sake. So now we have these variables, and I see these being useful if you ever need to do inline styles with variables for some reason, maybe there's something breaks and you have to do a quick fix, you know how it is, because you can't access your SASS variables. So that's why I kind of like to have some of these really basic ones that may be needed you know, somewhere else outside of the style sheet. And so that's kind of my approach to that. We could, of course, have just defined, you know, an H1 font size like you would normally with SASS variables. And so that's why I'm gonna get rid of this. So we're gonna say font size is gonna be var, which says, hey, grab the CSS variable, and then we're gonna put in that H1 font size. And now let's see if that did anything. All right. Oh yeah, so there we go. We see that the font has changed to a sans serif font, and we have a substantial amount of space above it and less so below it, which is already kind of cleaning it up nicely, at least to me. So let's finish this up, and I'm actually going to say comma H1, and let's just see if we can do that. So maybe I want this to also be like have the H1 class for some reason, just to see what happens. Okay, so that is working. So that is a way to clean it up, so we don't have to have, I mean, I'm sure part of the reason why Bootstrap has all of these in a separate file, you know, this is part of the reboot, and then this is specifically for your typographic classes. But for me, I think it makes just as much sense to just go ahead and define them at the same time, especially since they're borrowing the exact same stuff. So yeah, let's just do a really fast clean up here. We'll do these two are H2s, and these two down here are going to be H3s. And then, oh, and yeah, I guess I could have just grabbed these at the same time too. So hopefully we should see, if I wait to refresh, we should see no more serifed fonts on this page. And yeah, let's give it a shot. Okay, there we go. It didn't work on the paragraphs because I didn't do paragraphs, that's right. But all of the headings are now in that sans serif font. We've got some better spacing. To me, this makes a lot more sense with this H3 to be able to say, hey, like I belong to this paragraph belongs to me. And then also let's do one quick example where we get rid of this class. And again, this is kind of what I went over. So say we want to have, you know, this, we want this subsection right here. I'm going to change it back to an H2, of course, but then I also want to have, you know, the designers wanted that little, you know, something styled like this to be right above the subsection headline. So I'm not going to choose H3 because that would put it out of order. So 1, 3, 2, that makes no sense logically, especially if you're using it like a screen reader, other accessibility geared devices. So I'm going to use a P tag instead, but I'm going to give it a class of H3 because that's the styles that I want. I'm going to hit save, head on back here. We should see two things happen. Yep. Cool. And I guess this is where things could get really interesting, where we want to add some conditionals of like, you know, when do we get rid of the margin bottom, or if it's stacked on, if it's stacked on top, basically, like if there's an H3 class on top of an H2, do we change the configuration of things? So that's just kind of an interesting thing to add a little bit of complexity that maybe we can take a look at later. But it does look like we are starting to get some nice typography just from just like a couple lines of CSS. That's super nice. I guess SAS, but yeah, you can see these look a little bit better grouped. Like I'm not confused. This probably could have a little bit more space, you know, above this headline, but it is pretty clear that this paragraph belongs to this one, and this paragraph belongs to this one. And that's really what we're trying to get at with typographic rules, at least in design theory. And maybe that's another video or another idea for another day. But I think this is really pretty useful. I'll have to look at other ways to reach for this extend, rather than just as like include or like a mix in. So just to recap, we've gotten a heading that it's fine with, you know, whatever selector. And actually, yeah, let me just look at it really fast because I am curious how that looks in like the style sheet. So we've got H1. Oh, it is kind of repeating stuff. So yeah, there may be some intricate like differences in the way that it exports, and I'd have to explore this a little bit more to kind of see what's going on here. But at least for now, it's working fairly similarly to the mix in like at include kind of a thing. But there is this whole placeholder selector thing that I think we can explore a little bit more. But basically what we've done is we've got a basic, like this is what makes a heading for our styles, for our design system. And we're saying, you know, all of our headings are going to be pulling from this, and then we are just modifying the font size as they go along. And we've also set up these classes, which is really, really useful. I'd highly encourage you to do this on your own systems. And again, yeah, I'm just really obsessed with that video right now because yeah, it's on my mind. Accessibility is really important to me. I have MS, so it's it means a lot if you would take the time to figure out how accessibility impacts other people. I had to learn that the hard way by having that introduced to myself with a disability that I wasn't anticipating ever having to deal with. But yeah, it makes a huge difference to people when you take care of the accessibility. So I definitely encourage you to add those classes, make sure you're using the headings correctly. And I think this is a fun exploration into typography. And if you're interested more in the design side of typography, let me know, because I'd love to, you know, get more into the details of why on earth designers choose certain, you know, why do they want these line heights this way, or whatever it is. If that's something that's of interest to you, let me know, and I'll figure something out for you. But thanks so much